So there are three questions I'd like to put to each of you one by one. First of all, I'll work along in the same direction, but starting each one step along each time, so we vary the order. The first question then, from your organisation's perspective, what are the key barriers and challenges to the knowledge and tools generated through EC fund research being implemented to deliver greater integrity into the food chain? It's back to that question of implementation and the barriers to it. Monique.
I would mention two challenges maybe. First of all, from the consumer perspective, we believe that there is too much research being done into innovation that is in fact for the sake of innovation, and which does not really link to consumer expectation and consumer needs. And we as a consumer organization, we are very often asked at the end of a preparation of a project to come and to work as an advisory committee, while if you really want to have a good methodology, you involve consumer representatives at the beginning, at the design phase of a project, because then you can steer the process into how consumers react and what consumers expect. And we have seen that there is a gap with GMOs, how much money has been spent, and at the end of the day, consumers in Europe have said, we don't want it. It's not a question that it's not safe. We don't want it. And there is the same process going on with nanotechnologies for the moment. There is some sort of a strive towards innovation without asking people if they are receptive to it. And I don't say that it's bad or not nano, but please ask people if they are going to use it, if they know what's in there. And so the key words for the moment are innovation, competitiveness, sustainable jobs, and consumers come at the end of the process. That's the first challenge.
Can I just a comment on that? I mean, there you're talking about innovations which you argue consumers aren't wanting anyway. But I mean, there are plenty of innovations that consumers would like, presumably.
Well, then ask them how they would. I mean, there is still a streamlining of those innovations. Then why shouldn't consumers be early in the process, only be objects of something rather than subjects of something? If you want people to feel involved and in the process, why don't you involve them earlier? We are very often, asked by research projects who are applying for EU funds to tick off the box, would you come into the project? And we have to read like 20 pages projects, applications. We have to respond in 2 days' time, and it has to be
So the barrier there, as far as you're concerned, is that either the consumer voice is not heard, or it's brought in too late to be effective.
That's the point. That's the first challenge.
Okay, quickly the second then.
Yes, the second challenge is at the other end of the process, where we believe that another challenge is that of the potential weakness of enforcement. And that's at the national level, that if you have, I speak now about traceability or improved possibilities for checking and controlling and safeguarding, for example, safe food, but also in other areas, you need supervision authorities to be put in to have the possibility to do so. And there are many, many differences in the European Union among member states, and there is certainly a challenge to come.
Okay, David, your take on this, the barriers and challenges as you see it to implementing the knowledge that EC-funded research is bringing forward.
Okay, I think I'm right in quoting Monique in saying that the consumer in the European Union expects food to be safe. And that's clearly right, but in fact there are a chain of food safety related events occurring, E. coli, dioxin, mercury, melamine, various things. So the hard reality is that we are not there yet where we can absolutely guarantee. We might be better than road safety, but we're still not where we should be. And I think that we need to continue to develop and implement core capacities to address food safety events. We need to strengthen surveillance of foodborne disease and food contamination. We need to improve risk assessment methodologies, risk management methodologies, and risk communication. We need to further strengthen the product tracing and recall capabilities. We need to strengthen the scientific evidence base that underpins the question of food-related problems and food safety. And we need to implement a more robust EU-level global food, or well, even global perhaps, but certainly an EU-level food safety data system.
But a lot of things you talked about there are not, it's not there's actually a barrier. There's nothing preventing things happening. It's just that either we're not clever enough yet or we haven't done enough of whatever it is. That's part of what you're saying. That it's, but do you see any particular areas where we know a lot more that we simply are not putting into practice, which is really what a barrier implies?
Yes, okay, no, you're right. I haven't really listed barriers, but I think that the I think that the risk communication is an area where we should look more in the connection with barriers. I mean, there was talk a little bit there about GMOs and nanotechnology, and I think that perhaps from one perspective the consumer says he doesn't want these things, but I wonder if that's because the communication isn't working.
They don't quite understand,
and therefore the trade between innovation, and risk is not, and economic prospects and risk is maybe not as good as it could be. So I would certainly see more investment in risk communication as being a potential way of overcoming that barrier.
I thought that, that if we talk about, in English, we talk about the 3 R's at school, reading, writing, arithmetic, and I often thought that there should be a 4th in there, which is risk, because all our lives, making sensible decisions throughout our lives depends on understanding risk, but an awful lot of people simply find it very difficult, for quite understandable reasons, to take the notion of risk on board. Bernard, what do you think?
Well, maybe before I reply on anything on barriers or challenges, I would like to say that on the other side, so far, if I look back, we have benefited from quite a lot of research projects. Several of them have given us really an added value, so we could actually use them in our day-to-day work in producing our scientific opinions, for instance, in the area of dietary reference values, or in the area of alien invasive species, or on antimicrobial resistance transferability. So to be a little positive also from that perspective, we have benefited from projects. If you ask me about challenges ahead, I would say for us, a challenge is also, and this is a little really on the day-to-day work of our scientists, is to anticipate today what will we need in the future. If you give you an example on data sets, we very often realize that we do not have enough data to do a full comprehensive risk assessment as we would wish it to do. So we have to identify what do we need, what data do we need. We have to identify in what structure, in what classification, in what format this data has to be delivered in 5 or 6 years' time, while at the same time being clear that we then will need them with any new methodology. So this forward thinking really is the difficulty, anticipating what will we need in classification, in formatting.
Right.
This is just one example. Similar examples or similar things you can say about new methodologies on risk assessment. So basically this, I would say, in order to make sure that we use research at the end of the research project, the outcome of the research, to the fullest extent, it's very important to design it right at the beginning. And for this, I think I'm not having a recipe to solve it, but it's very helpful and very important to have a very good permanent dialogue between organizations needing science and organizations funding science.
Yeah. Okay, Mala, I mean, as the producers, one could say that perhaps you represent one of the barriers insofar as you may not be taking up the ideas that are coming out of organizations like the European Commission.
I suppose you could accuse the industry of that, although I can assure you the industry is very anxious to use all these innovative processes or goods that they possibly can. I think one of the things that was flagged up earlier on about the communication, yes, communication really is very important. Dialogue is very important. I'd like to add not only risk communication but benefit communication, because there's a lot of negativeness around, all this risk business. So there's a lot of good out there as well, and usually new. By definition, really, new should mean better, should mean quality, of course, and safety always, but should also mean something that's better. Added value. Thank you, Monique. So new is also, innovation is also beneficial by definition. So I think communication around benefits is important. There was one other thing I wanted to add. It's left my mind. What was the part that was it? I've forgotten. Oh, yes, Monique. We have launched, as you know, about 2 years ago, a platform on nanotech. We have a large range of people around the table. We meet several times a year. And this was in order to avoid being accused of, coming out at the end and bringing people in at the end. We tried to turn this around in the industry and say, look, let's explore this together. So we have a lot of people from the Commission, we have people from EFSA, we have a lot of stakeholders there. We have invited the consumer groups. Unfortunately, I think you haven't been able to come to many of our meetings, if any, but you are still welcome and you will get another invitation. But do come, because we explore the benefits as well as the risks. So,
right, there's an offer you can't refuse. You can discuss it further afterwards.